Welcome back, everybody. In today's video, we're going to be discussing Colston Loveland of Michigan. What are strengths and weaknesses? How do we think he's deployed at the NFL level? And finally, what do we think we can expect from him in fantasy? Watch to the end of this video, and you should have a good idea. Taking a look at his measurements, he's a little bit south of 6'6", 248 pounds with 10-inch hands. Now, he is an early declare, and he's 20 years and 9 months old right now, but he's going to be 21 for the duration of his rookie season. But I will say, with a lot of these tight end prospects, especially players like Warren, they were older when they were producing like they were. Whereas while Loveland sure hasn't had that dominant seasons from a statistical standpoint yet, like Warren did, he is doing what he's doing at a much younger age, so that is something to note. Now, before I delve into the season by season stats here, I wanted to show you his percentage of his team's offense this season. So taking a look at his team receiving yards, he had 34.7% of the entire team's receiving yards himself. In terms of his team's receptions, he had 29.5% of his team's receptions. And then in terms of his team receiving touchdowns, he had 41.7%. So while some of these stats don't look incredible, that is how much of the offense he is. And remember that this season they lost J.J. McCarthy. And so the quarterback play was terrible. Now, I'm prefacing with that because taking a look at his stats, taking a look at his freshman season, he had 27 targets, 16 receptions, 235 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. And if you're not Brock Bowers, you're typically not going to have a ridiculous, dominant true freshman season. Then taking a look at his sophomore season, his stats were incredible. But this was once again with J.J. McCarthy, who was selected in the first round, but nonetheless still impressive. On 62 targets, he had 45 receptions, 649 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. For a tight end, that is impeccable. Really, tight ends generally, unless you are truly an elite prospect coming out, aren't really featured parts of their offenses too often. Now, it is trending to be a little bit more normal, but for many years, we just didn't see that very often unless you were truly a dominant player. Now, taking a look at his senior season, on 82 targets, he had 56 receptions, 582 receiving yards, and 5 receiving touchdowns. And so his targets, receptions, and touchdowns did go up, but his yards went down substantially considering the amount of target volume he got. But I just wanted to point out how much of the offense he was this season. And so taking a look at some advanced stats here, among draft eligible FBS tight ends with at least 50 targets, that was a sample size of 25 here. Loveland ran 218 routes, which is 94.4% of his team's routes. That's awesome. That's high involvement. Now, taking a look at his deployment, I love this style of tight end. So taking a look at his slot snap percentage, he played 32.5% of the time in the slot, 18.6% of the time out wide, and then 47.6% of the time in line. And so this is true positional versatility. I think he's going to be dominant from the slot at the NFL level. In terms of out wide, I think if he's able to match up against a linebacker at the NFL level, I do think that he's going to have a huge advantage against some, a really good coverage safety. Depends on who it is. But in terms of the positional versatility, I generally want somebody that can be used all over the field because it just helps them get the ball more. Whereas, some of these guys that are just pure inline tight ends, it just limits the upside at the NFL level, in my opinion. Taking a look at some other stats here, his yards per out run of 2.67 was third in the sample size. His PFF receiving grade of 90.6 was also third in the sample size. Now, his yak per reception of 5.2 was 15th, and his missed tackles forced of 3 were 23rd. He's fine after the catch, as in, if he has a straight line, he's going to, chug ahead for extra yardage. He's not terrible after the catch, but he's not quite as good after the catch as you would prefer out of a tight end prospect, so that is something to note. Now, taking a look at his contested catch percentage, he had 20% this season, which was 2 out of 10. That is quite poor. That is something I'll note. Now, taking a look at his targets, he had 82 on the season, which is 8.2 per game. That's awesome for a tight end. In terms of receptions, he had 56, which is 5.6 per game. Great for a tight end. 582 yards and 58.2 a game is fine as well. And then 5 receiving touchdowns at 0.5 a game is fine as well. Once again, the total production here isn't really, in my opinion, matching how talented he is as a prospect. And I think offensive environment is a huge reason why. Delving further into his ability to beat man and zone specifically, in terms of his ability against man coverage, his PFF grade versus man of 88.5 was third in the sample size, and his yards per out run versus man of 2.89 was fourth. He is adept at beating man coverage. He separates quickly off the line. That is going to be a strength of his at the NFL level, especially with his positional versatility. I think he's going to be a tremendous asset in the quick passing game. Now, taking a look at his PFF grade versus zone and yards per out run versus zone, his PFF grade of 73.4 was 10th, and his yards per out run of 2.10 were 10th as well. I do think he's better against man than zone, but I don't want you to take this as he's poor against zone. He can find the soft spots just fine. That's not going to be an issue for him. Taking a look at his PFF grade on the screens, so it was only a sample size of 6 here, but his 94.0 score was fourth in the sample size. I think he's fine, but I don't think he's dominant in the screen game like Jonnu Smith, for instance. So yeah, sample size of 6. Take that for what you will. Taking a look at his PFF grade in the slot, though, his 86.64 was third. I do agree with PFF in this scenario. He is great in the slot, and he's going to be a mismatch due to his elite height. And then taking a look at his first downs caught, his 31 are tied for 7th in the sample size. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Major Jack, and Infamy MTG. If you would like to become a member, I'm going to leave a link in the comment section. As far as what you'll gain, you'll get access to a private Discord server. I'm going to have a real life and fantasy football chat where we talk about real life NFL news. Any questions you might have will be answered in the real life NFL chat. And as far as the fantasy football chat, we'll talk about what's happening in the fantasy world. I'll give you team reviews, give you optimal roster construction based on your specific league settings, trades you can make to strengthen your roster, buying and selling points, specifically price points for various players based on your positions of need. I'll give you a special shout out, obviously, on all of these videos. You'll get early access to videos. You'll be part of private live streams that are not available to regular YouTube members. And you will also have the ability to suggest videos specifically for you on Patreon. I've already made one on Isaac Rendo as per request by one of my Patreon members. And so once again, if you would like to join, the link is going to be in the comment section. Thanks. Taking a look at the grading for Loveland, remember that he's a true junior out of Michigan. He's a little bit south of 6'6", 248 pounds. My valuation, I think he's worthy of a second-round pick, but there is a legitimate chance he goes first round to the Broncos or the Chargers. And I would especially like the Broncos situation because they are depleted for pass-catching talent. Now, my comp for him, I think he's comparable to Tyler Eifert. They're both very fluid movers pre-catch for somebody their size. They can beat you on all 3 levels of the field. And they also have this ability to high point the ball incredibly well and are tremendous red zone threats. At least Eifert used to be. And I would say that they're both decent after the catch, but they're not as wiggly after the catch as some of these other guys. So I do think that the Tyler Eifert comp is incredibly accurate with him. It's just, we hope that he doesn't have the same issues like Tyler Eifert did. Remember that Loveland is coming off that AC issue, and he had to have surgery on it, but he should be ready for camp, they said. Now, taking a look at the official grade, I give him a 75.5 out of 100, which is a good tight end prospect. And tight ends generally don't score incredibly well. Bowers did happen to score a 90, but that's because Brock Bowers was just great at everything. Now, taking a look at the specific grades here, in terms of the short route running, I gave him a 4.5 out of 5. He has a quick release off the line, which I don't have releases here for tight ends, so it's kind of factors into the grade here. But he's very quick off the line. He runs a nasty slant route, shallow cross, speed out if necessary. It's very good. There's little wasted movement, and it's his route running overall, as you can see, is quite good. Taking a look at his medium routes, he has a decent 10-yard out. He'll work across the field on the crossers as well. Very good, little wasted movement, quick off the line, and good judgment in terms of the crossing routes of the drop depth of linebackers and getting behind them effectively into their blind spots. Very good at that. Now, taking a look at his deep routes, I gave him a 3.5 out of 5. He didn't really run quite as many of those at Michigan. I think quarterback play had something to do with that. But I did see a really nice rep on a go ball, or a fade route rather, where he created a little bit of, he was behind the defense, but he adjusted to a poorly thrown pass, and he had to shove the guy away from him and then fall down with the ball. So I do think that he has a decent amount of deep route running ability, but I just didn't see it consistently enough from him on film to really give him a really high grade. But the rep I did see out of him, I really liked. Taking a look at his blocking, I gave him a 3.5 out of 5. He's an effective run blocker, especially on those wide zone runs. I just don't think he's, elite particularly, but above average for sure. And that is going to help him be on the field. Taking a look at his football IQ, a 4 out of 5. He generally blocks his assignment correctly, doesn't miss those. He generally understands the drop depth of linebackers and runs his routes effectively, reasonably little wasted movement, and just has a good feel in terms of his spatial awareness. So I do think that he is an incredibly intelligent player as well. Now, taking a look at his speed, I gave him a 7 out of 10. It's pretty decent, and he can pull away from defenders, but it's not like Evan Ingram, right? So now taking a look at his acceleration, I gave him an 8 out of 10. He is very quick off the line of scrimmage, and it translates to quick separation in terms of his short route running on those slants and the shallow crosses. Taking a look at his deceleration, his snap down on hitches is very good, especially considering he's almost 6'6", 250 pounds. It's it's almost elite as it is, but for his size, it is pretty elite to be honest with you. But I have seen a little bit better from players who probably aren't as tall as him. Taking a look at his agility, I gave it 3.5 out of 5. For somebody that's his size in terms of being really, really tall, it's above average in my opinion. But he's just not the best prospect I've ever seen in terms of the open field elusiveness at tight end. And in terms of his change of direction, he definitely has decent change of direction in his routes. I would say it's better pre-catch than post-catch, if you know what I mean. But nonetheless, still above average in my opinion. Taking a look at his catching, I gave him a 4 out of 5. I did see a couple drops, but he's generally good at the catch point. In terms of his catch in traffic, I gave him a 3 out of 5. I did see some highlight level contested catches, especially working with his quarterback in scramble drill on one rep. But it's just the consistency. So I did ding him a little bit, but he nonetheless has the ability to make some high level contested catches. His run after catch, I give him a 3.5 out of 5. He generally turns upfield really quickly and he gets everything he can in a straight line. But he's just, not dynamic east to west in terms of his juking ability. So he doesn't get an elite or great score there. In terms of his dog factor, a 4 out of 5. He is really good in terms of seeking contact. He's not afraid. He's good in the run game as well, above average in my opinion. And he's willing to do anything necessary to win and help his team out. But the injury concern is factoring in here a little bit. In terms of analytics, I give him a 6 out of 10. While he did see a yardage decrease from his sophomore to junior season, he was a lot of his team's offense both seasons. And once again, it's not too common, although it's becoming a little bit more common recently, that tight ends are really focal points of their offenses. So I think that considering his quarterback play was terrible, and he still had more touchdowns, more targets, and more receptions than his sophomore season, I still like the progressive growth from him because he was a ton of his team's offense this season. Taking a look at his draft cap, I gave him a 4.5 out of 5. There's a chance he's an early second. There's also a chance he's a late first. So you give him the 4.5 out of 5 as opposed to the 5 for that reason. And then in terms of positional versatility, you can definitely line him up in line, absolutely in the slot. Out wide, I gave him a 4 out of 5 because out wide, I think he's going to be a mismatch against linebackers for sure. But, some of these really good coverage safeties and potentially cornerbacks, I'm not sure, especially if they're on the taller side, how he's going to be able to stack up against them. But nonetheless, still effective and great positional versatility, which is great for fantasy. And in terms of my worries and limitations, he is returning from a grade 5 AC joint dislocation and he had surgery, but he should be available for training camp. Besides that, I don't have any issues with him, and I think he's a good tight end prospect. Now, where does Loveland rank among his contemporaries in the 25 class? Well, the only player we've released a video for so far is Tyler Warren. We think that Warren is a great prospect as opposed to Loveland being a good prospect, but we still like Loveland a lot. I personally made sure to snag him in a startup because I need to have a share of him, especially if he ends up getting that first round draft capital and goes to the Broncos. Remember that he's a true junior out of Michigan. He's a little bit south of 6'6", 248 pounds. I think he's worthy of a second round pick, but he could very well go in the back half of the first round. My comp is Tyler Eifert. They're both fluid movers before the catch. They can high point the ball really well. They work with their quarterbacks in scramble drill and in the red zone especially. And I think that he, much like Tyler Eifert, is going to be a great red zone threat and score a lot of touchdowns for us in fantasy. And my official grade for him is a 75.5 out of 100. Thank you for watching the video. Please like and subscribe. Check out my Patreon and have a good day.